Press Balance System film is made from layered PPS film, made in Japan by Toray. This film uses the world's toughest resin, which can be found on the bodies of aircraft. The press balance system is the first and only technology to allow for die cutter adjustments this precise. Over 350 die cutters use PBS film in Japan alone. Before starting, prepare by cleaning the surface of the chase, the cutting plate, and the protective plate, as well as the back surface of the cutting plate support. Take care not to leave any bits of tape or residue on the front surface of the die cutter. Use a digital measuring device to measure the size of the chase, whether you use protective plates or not. Take note of the length and width measurements. Next, measure the width of the chase's frame on both sides. For this example, 45 millimeters. Turn the chase over and measure the frame width on the front too. In this case, 40 millimeters. Take note of these measurements. In this example, we're using a type of metal die called a sandwich die. But you can also use a standard plywood cutting die if the cutting blades are precisely vertical. Set the cutting plate inside the chase and turn it over. The protective plate here is 1 millimeter thick, so we'll stack two 0.4 millimeter thick glass epoxy boards and temporarily attach them along one side. Then insert into the machine. Now perform a half cut. Using a 0.2 millimeter thick test film sandwiched between the protective plates. This test cut is done with the protective plates in place to take their unevenness into account as well. Make sure to start the test cut with the lowest cutting pressure. Check to see where the cutting pressure is strongest, based on where the half cut is initially visible. Repeat, gradually increasing the cutting pressure. When adjusting cutting pressure for this half cut, make sure it's not too high. The blade absolutely must not touch the cutting plate. Excess cutting pressure can damage the blade, which will make it impossible to perform a proper half cut. It can also cause the blade to cut all the way through the film. If this happens, you'll need a 0.4 millimeter thick paperboard for test half cuts to adjust the cutting pressure for two stacked PBS films. If the half cut is made into the entire surface, then the pressure has been properly adjusted. Measure the size of the cutting plate. This plate is 670 by 970 millimeters, so we'll be cutting the PBS film to match that size. Place the PBS film on the cutting plate and fix it in position using tape. Now perform a half cut. the die blades should cut into the PBS film only once, then pull out the cutting plate. The cutting pressure has been copied onto the PBS film. The grid of square cuts into it serves as confirmation. Mark the orientation of the protective plates. Mark the center as well. Now peel off the cut squares from the PBS film. Start by peeling off the areas with weaker pressure and shallower cuts first, working your way toward the areas with stronger pressure and deeper cuts. At first, you will be able to easily remove multiple layers of film at a time. But as you go on, fewer and fewer layers will come off, until you are eventually removing a single layer at a time. When you can no longer remove the cut sections with only your fingers, you can use adhesive tape to help peel off just the cut sections. Place the PBS film on a light-up board and continue to peel off layers using adhesive tape. The light makes it easier to tell at a glance which areas are thicker than others, making the work easier and more straightforward. The goal is to create a sort of contour map of the variations in pressure. This process can be a bit tedious, but it is an incredibly important part of improving the precision of your press. Take your time. Peel off the layers slowly, one by one. Eventually, some segments will be only partially cut around their edges. Use a box cutter to connect the cut parts of the edges, leaving the uncut portion intact. The remaining portion will no longer be square. The finished PBS film should look like a contour map of elevations. Now, set the PBS film in place. This Bobst machine uses a 3.5 mm cutting plate, so sandwich the PBS film between 0.8 mm and 2.5 mm stainless steel plates. When placing the PBS film between the cutting plate and a stainless steel plate, pay close attention to their positions. If you are using your PBS film inside the cutting plate, you can continue using the same protective plate as before. Carefully align the centers of all layers, making sure that the left edge of the PBS film is about 3 mm from the first blade, so it comes in contact with the film. In this case, the gap between the first blade and the edge of the back chase is 10 mm, so place the PBS film with the first blade 7 mm from the edge. The PBS film should be positioned the same way when using a new protective plate too. You can peel off the film covering the adhesive on both the protective plate and the PBS film to stick them together, then set them in the chase. Perform a test cut with paper. Let's adjust the height of the PBS film a little more for the areas that initially had stronger cutting pressure and where the test paper was cut through. Check for high-pressure areas by looking for cuts on the test paper, then circle the corresponding areas on the PBS film. Fill in the circled areas with diagonal lines. Peel off a single layer from each circled area, using the box cutter to cut along the outside edge, and to cut off any irregular parts inside the circle to allow you to peel a single layer off the top. Peeling off layers of the PBS film in high-pressure areas to compensate for subtle height deviations in the machine is the opposite of how zone patching is usually handled, by adding thin layers of material to low-pressure areas. The old method was a tedious, time-consuming process, and PBS film can significantly reduce your make-ready time. If you repeat this fine-tuning process 2 or 3 times, you can achieve exceptionally precise zone patching. We recommend redoing this process once a year to maintain the precisely minimized height deviations. Now, perform another test cut with the same cutting pressure as before. Cut again with slightly more pressure. The paper should be cut through almost perfectly. Now, fine-tune the gripper side or weak pressure areas using scrap PBS film. Peel off a single layer of scrap film about 5 millimeters wide and apply it onto the PBS film where the first blade would come into contact. Continue to perform test cuts, applying one layer at a time of PBS film to any areas that were not cut through. However, when it comes to raising the height where the first blade comes into contact, we recommend under-adjusting slightly, like with pressure-sensitive tape on a spot sheet, because this can otherwise lead to cutting off the paper from the grip portion. Next, attach the finished PBS film to the cutting plate side. In this case, we will be attaching the PBS film directly onto the 0.8 mm stainless steel plate below. Carefully align the PBS film. Cut off any excess portions. There is a thin film on the adhesive back of the PBS film. To ensure it goes on cleanly, prepare a spray bottle full of water. Remove half of the film on the back of the PBS film and spray the adhesive with water. This slows down adhesion, giving you more time to fix any issues. Spread the PBS film out flat, using the putty trowel to press the water out from under it. Remove the film from the other half to expose the adhesive and repeat. Do a test cut after setting the PBS film in place. The cut should be more or less completely even throughout. PBS film installation is now complete. Thank you for watching.